Yeah?
Yes.
Yes, and in hand rehab. All right, so the fingers. Sometimes you can measure all the fingers at the same time. Sometimes you can do them individually. It can be done both ways, just depending on the situation. So first of all, and I'm not going to go in great detail with all of these, but the basic idea is going to be, oh, we got a Band-Aid, all right.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
All right.
All right. You're going to stabilize the proximal bone of the joint and give resistance on the distal bone. So if I'm testing, here's the motion that I want you to do. I guess this table's kind of high. Are you able to sit up and kind of bend, be like this? You raise the chair some more. Yeah, okay. All right, so here's the motion I want you to do. So what's that motion? MCP flexion. Just keep your fingers straight and go up like that. All right, so are you able to do that? So he's at least a grade. Now, you'll notice the comment, look at the two comments on the right. Generally, one or two fingers are enough to resist finger and thumb motions. So you got to think about what is maximum resistance here. It's not the same as at the biceps or somewhere else at a bigger joint. Now look at number 2. The influence of gravity on the fingers is inconsequential. So the gravity and gravity minimized positions are not important. Okay, so I think that actually comes from your book, but we're going to, for the sake of simplicity, basically follow the same procedure. So if he's not able to flex there, I'm going to put him in a gravity minimized position, which would be what? So we're going to go ahead and do that, but keep in mind that it's not as clear-cut now when you have such small joints about if gravity is really making that much difference or not. All right. Okay, so again, I could have him do all of that, and I could give, now hold it right there and don't let me move you. Where am I giving resistance? It's at the distal bone, which would be what? Proximal phalanges. That's where I need to give my resistance. All right, if I'm, okay. And again, I could do it. I could go ahead and bend this finger up. Now hold it right there, okay? Don't let me pull it down. So I could do one finger at a time or do them all together. Okay, if I were to have him, okay, stabilize right here, try to bend just right there. Okay, so what motion am I trying to get there? Pip flexion. And where would I give my resistance? Hold it there and don't let me pull it down. Actually, technically, the middle phalanges, right? And what muscle is that emphasizing? Flexor digitorum superficialis, if that's where I'm giving the resistance. Okay, if I stabilize the middle phalanges and say, are you able to curl your fingers there? All right, and it's hard to do all of them at the same time. I'll do these two first. I'm giving resistance on the distal phalanges, so this is emphasizing the flexor digitorum profundus, right? By the way, what was this emphasizing, where his fingers, his IPs are extended and his MCPs are flexed? What muscle is that emphasizing?
The superficialis.
What muscle does that? Lumbrical. This is emphasizing lumbricals, even though the superficialis and profundus also do MCP flexion. When I keep the fingers extended, I'm emphasizing, not eliminating the other two, but emphasizing the lumbricals. Okay, so if he can't do any of those motions, I'm going to put him in a gravity minimized position, right? And just go through the same process that we've done before. Okay, for lumbricals, if I need to distinguish between a 1 and a 0, that's pretty tough. Because it's really hard to try to palpate the lumbrical muscles. In fact, what do we say in the notes? Yeah, basically it's saying there you can't really palpate the lumbricals. So you take your best guess between 1 and 0. If you can't, you're probably just going to say 0 if you see no movement occurring. All right, so we did the finger flexors. Can we palpate the flexor digitorum superficialis? So yeah, if I find, oh, you don't have a palmaris longus, do you?
I do not.
Okay, so I find his flexor carpi radialis, and I go to the medial side of that. For the rest of us, it's medial to the palmaris longus. You can feel flexor digitorum superficialis in there. Okay, and you can see that on Muscle Man. I should have pulled up Muscle Man. Okay, now when you get to the profundus, notice that's saying to palpate on the anterior surface of the middle phalanx, right? And again, that's going to be, go ahead and try to curl your finger there. That's hard to feel, but it is going through there because the tendons go to what bones? The profundus goes to the distal phalanges. So you can't really palpate the profundus down here too well because you're going through other muscles. But you can the superficialis. Okay, by the way, notice, like under finger PIP flexors, in the comments section, it's talking about substitutions to watch out for. It says, be care of the tenodesis action of the wrist. Remember that? Remember talking about that? So that means when we're doing these finger flexion movements, I don't want his wrist doing what? Extending to try to help do the finger flexion. So the wrist should be neutral the whole time. And again, you want to isolate the movement. So if he's doing that, I say, no, keep your wrist right there. And maybe I even stabilize if I need to. All right. So, okay, that was the first three. Any comments on the first three? Okay. See if you can figure out the typo for the finger MCP extensors. Okay, if I want him to do that against gravity, what position should his forearm be in?
Neutral.
Okay, that's what it has in the notes. And that is incorrect. I was incorrect in the notes. So if I want to do, here's the motion I want you to do. Go ahead and curl your fingers in like that. And go back like that. Is that against gravity? Now gravity might be inconsequential, so it might not matter. But technically, if I want to go against gravity, what position?
Against gravity?
Yes.
Pro?
Pronation.
Pronation, sorry.
Okay, that's why I gave the funny look. Prone. I wasn't sure if that was short for pronation or what. Okay, so here's the
Your
motion I
profits.
want you to do, like that. Okay, again, so go ahead and do that motion. He's at least a grade. And then I can give resistance. Again, it can be to all the joints together. And what bone would I give my resistance?
Proximal.
Since we're doing MCP extension, it should be on the proximal phalanges. Hold it right there. Don't let me push it. Hold it. I can do them all together, or I could do one at a time. Hold it there, and go all the way across. Okay. If I did the index finger, hold it there. I'm also testing the
Indicus.
extensor indices.
Indices?
Indices, right. Okay. If I did the little finger, hold it there. I'm also testing the extensor
Digiti minimi.
digiti minimi. No, that's not right. Digiti minimi, that's right. Okay, so the correction was under number 1, under position. Instead of the wrist in, okay, wrist is in neutral. Forearm should be in pronation, not neutral. It says forearm in pronation. It should be in neutral. I mean, it should be in pronation, not in neutral. Okay, can I palpate any of those muscles to distinguish between a 1 and a 0? And again, be able to use the two methods to palpate. So extensor digitorum, I can palpate. Okay, so he's too weak to do the motion, but this is the motion I want you to do. Okay, can you do that? So that's one way. Okay, what's the other way?
Wait a minute.
Put him in there,
Tell him to hold.
and even though he can't hold it, try to hold it there. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. I'm letting gravity move him into flexion. Okay, now, if you happen to be in the gravity minimized position, that second method's just a little bit different, right? Okay, so I'm going to put him in the motion, but if I say just hold it there, gravity's not moving him into flexion, right? So I have to do that. Okay, hold it there. Even though he can't hold it, and I'm moving him into the opposite direction. And he's trying to hold with his finger extensors. Okay, so think through again, trying to get a muscle or tendon to contract to distinguish between 1 and 0 and be able to show the two ways. And by the way, another way to think about it is when I tell him, go ahead and try to do this motion. Okay, even though he's too weak, try to do that. I'm trying to get him to do a what contraction?
Concentric.
A concentric contraction. If I put him into the position and say, hold it there, hold it, I'm trying to get him to do
Isometric.
I'm trying to get an isometric, but he can't hold it there, so I'm trying to get an eccentric contraction, lengthening contraction. That might be I don't know if that's a helpful way to think about it or not.
Can we show you all of these muscles on Muscle Man? Are they all?
No. So Muscle Man is not, can you roll up the Muscle Man, please? He's not that detailed when it comes to the finger muscles. So some of these you can, some of these you can't. Like, can you see extensor digitorum on Muscle Man?
Probably.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes, you can. Well, I like the way you're grabbing the trunk rather than the arms. Thank you very much for doing that. So there's extensor digitorum. Remember the interconnecting bands that are right there? So you can see that. You can see thumb tendons, extensor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis. So, but lumbricals, actually these are interossei. And what would these be right here?
Palmar interossei.
Okay, well, those could be palmar interossei. But the tendons, what are the tendons there?
Oh, the flexor.
Is it superficialis or profundus?
Probably
I'm guessing they're
superficialis.
superficialis, so I'm not exactly sure. They probably are superficialis. So, but like the thumb muscles or the intrinsic thumb muscles are there, but it's hard to distinguish on Muscle Man. The abductor pollicis brevis versus the flexor pollicis brevis on there. So it's harder to distinguish those on Muscle Man.
So basically just show you the ones that we can identify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, moving along. Okay, okay. All right, so abductors. Okay, so I want you to move your finger out like that. You go ahead and do that. Is that against gravity?
Nope.
No, but it's kind of hard to figure out a position to do all the abduction against gravity. Because remember, the middle finger is the reference point. So we just do away with all that. So you'll notice that in the column for 0 to 2, what are we going to call a grade 2? Just doing partial range of motion. So there's no 3 minus, 2 plus, 2 minus. It's just partial range of motion would be grade 2. But you can't really go against gravity in a good way for all of those. All right, so I'll just say spread your fingers apart for me like that. Okay, if you can do that, that's a grade 3. And then I can start giving resistance. Technically, where should I give my resistance? If you think about what muscles do that. The dorsal interossei, where do they have their insertions? On metacarpal. So that's where I'm going to give the resistance. So hold that right there. Hold it, hold it. I can do 2 at the same time. Hold it right there. Hold it, hold it. Oh, nice. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. I got to work on that ring finger abduction. Hold it right there. Hold, 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 hold. Okay, so you can do 2 at a time, 1 at a time with that.
So if we're starting here, and whether I can do just that or just that, and that's full, it's
Yeah.
a 2. Okay.
All right. Can we test the finger adductors? Yeah, can you bring all your, I'm going to spread your fingers apart. Can you bring them all towards your middle finger like this? Okay, and then can I give resistance? Yeah, where do I give resistance? What muscles do that? The palmar interossei, which have their insertions where? Metacarpal. So bring your fingers together right here. Now hold it there. Hold it, hold it, hold it. So we can give resistance to 2 at a time, 1 at a time. Again, partial range of motion will be a grade 2. All right, any comments on the fingers?
So we do not have to worry about grading them as a 2 plus or a 3 minus at all for this skills test.
No, except for you, Ben.
Okay.
No, we don't. All right, how about the thumb? Okay, so same idea. You just want to think about where you're stabilizing and where you're giving your resistance. Now, the first one we have is thumb, MCP, and IP flexors. Okay, so to go against gravity, I'm going to be supinated right. and we're doing MCP and PIP flexion. So that's the movement that I want you to do right there. Go ahead and do that. Okay, now if I give resistance at the proximal phalanx, what muscle am I technically emphasizing there? What muscle?
Flexor
Policies.
pollicis brevis.
Flexor pollicis brevis, that's right. If I give my resistance at the distal phalanx, I'm emphasizing the flexor pollicis longus, right there. Okay, what would be a gravity minimized position? We're going to say neutral, although that's kind of gravity assisted in a sense, but gravity is kind of inconsequential, so we're not going to get all worked up over that. Can I palpate any of those muscles?
The hypothenar eminent.
Okay,
Or
so
thenar, I should say.
so I can palpate the flexor pollicis brevis in the thenar eminence, and you do want to find that on the hand model, even though that might be hard to distinguish on muscle man. That's going to be hard to distinguish the flexor versus abductor pollicis brevis on him, but on the hand model you should be able to do that. Okay, so that's going to be right about here. Can I palpate the flexor pollicis longus? Well, the tendon is going right over the proximal phalanx there, so I can try to palpate the tendon there. Okay, try to bend your finger like that. Okay, so I can feel for the tendon there. All right. And then we've got the thumb, MCP, and IP extensors. So we'll go against gravity. Here's the motion that I want you to do. Okay, go ahead and do that motion. If I give my resistance on the proximal phalanx, I'm emphasizing the extensor pollicis brevis. If I stabilize that and give my resistance, and hold that please, on the distal phalanx, I'm emphasizing the extensor pollicis longus. Right. And you can palpate those tendons. Where do I find the extensor pollicis longus? Go ahead and try that motion. Oh, okay. I can even see it popping out right there. That's the posterior part of the. Let's actually hold that there. Do abduction for me. Hold it right there. Hold it right there. Okay. Bring it in and do that. Hold it right there. Okay. So it's the posterior from the anatomical position, the posterior tendon of the anatomical snuff box. So that's very much, I can palpate that. And then I can palpate anterior to that the tendon of the extensor pollicis brevis. The extensor pollicis brevis and the abductor pollicis longus go really close to each other, so it's really hard to distinguish those two. That's the anterior border of the anatomical snuff box. But generally the more prominent one is going to be the extensor pollicis brevis. So if you're looking here at me, this is longus and brevis tendons right there. All right, so any comments on those? Okay, so let's think about measuring, what's this motion right here? Go away from your hand like that. Okay, so this is CMC, what? Abduction. So, where am I going to give my resistance? So it's the CMC joint that's moving. What muscles do that? Abductor pollicis brevis, abductor pollicis longus. So where should I give my resistance? Okay, go ahead and do this motion right here. Okay, keep your hand flat down and just hold it right there. So technically for the brevis, I'm giving my resistance on the first metacarpal, right? The abductor pollicis longus goes all the way to the proximal phalanx, so that's where I'm giving my resistance, technically to emphasize the longus. What's the direction of the resistance?
Extension.
To adduction.
To adduction, right. So again, you got to make sure you can distinguish between extension flexion at the CMC and abduction and adduction at the CMC.